It's time for our quality time interview on Kansas Sports Chatter, an opportunity where we get to spend a little extra time with our next guest. And that next guest is Greg Maxwell. He is the head coach of the Ellinwood High School volleyball team. Coach, appreciate you coming on. How's it going in Eagle Country?
Sure. Appreciate you having us. Things are going well right now.
For you, and you look at the month of September, like what do you want to get out of September? Like what are your expectations and what are you trying to at least kind of glean from the month of September with your team?
We've had a little bit different philosophies as I've matured as a coach, as a head coach. Our summer is very important to us. We spend a lot of time really preparing, and we like to be off and running once we get to the first part of the season. And that hasn't changed. But, as you look at some of the model programs who have won these state titles and are accomplishing that major goal, we see there's a lot of growth through September that I think we've missed in the past couple of years. So we're looking at where we are now and where we want to be by the end of September as far as statistical improvement, but also just cleaning some things up to where our timing with some of our aspects is a little bit stronger and just our overall consistency.
What does a typical Ellenwood practice look like at this time of the year?
I'll tell you what, they're tough, and the girls would tell you that. A lot of it comes down to, there's an anxiety that I hold every day that I want to create the best practice plan possible, that I know that we're maximizing the time, efficiency for these girls. I ask them to work extremely hard, both physically and probably even more so mentally. And that puts a lot of pressure on myself that I want to make sure that I'm giving them the best, that we're coming out of each practice better than we went into it. This year's different. We are at a level now from a team aspect that we're not spending as much time on some of the big skills. We're focused more on really polishing up some of the finer details and the little things that'll help us. And tempo is one of our goals. We want a faster offense. We want to be a little bit cleaner on defense, and just trying to add some things that will give us that edge when it comes down to that most crucial times at the end of the year when the pressure's on and we have that advantage.
So how detailed is that practice? Because I remember like reading an article or a story on John Wooden at UCLA, and he would like write to like the seconds of like what he wanted to do at every second of every practice. Do you go that far, and how do you structure it?
I've actually adapted a little different. I used to do it time like that. I went on everything on time. Now it's my list is everything that needs to be accomplished during that day. And I will basically adjust times as needed. If we don't get to a certain point or a threshold that I expect for that drill, we're going to stay in until we get there. And usually we don't bend that rule until we accomplish whatever it is that specific drill is. There are times I'll pull a drill, maybe if it gets a little bit too long, and I think it's important. I've just learned as a coach, you've got to take the temperature of your kids, and there's certain days they're going to be able to handle certain pressure that you can apply to them, and other days that you got to maybe reroute that a little differently and put pressure in a different way that's going to be productive. Because it's important, and I've told the girls we've got to push ourselves in all aspects, including myself, that we might not leave the gym feeling good about how we ended a drill. Where in the past we always like to end on a great note, and this year we want to kind of push to. There might be a day we're frustrated, and we come back the next day and know that okay, we got to be better today.
You mentioned the drills. So, like, say in volleyball, an individual messes up on one of those drills. Do you stop it and focus on that actual individual and kind of pull them aside, or do you kind of make it more of a team fix where you guys fix it together?
Really, more team is what we kind of do. There might be a moment where we, individually, I'll walk out there and explain something that, maybe you can see maybe one kid's just not grasping what we're trying to accomplish. But most of it comes down to team aspects, and we hold them accountable. There's a lot of, you know, whether it be consequential, whether it be a time aspect or they, have some, burpees or something, maybe they have to run a lap or whatever. We try to integrate things like that. And then, my big thing with them is the motivation shouldn't have to come from the fear of consequence. The motivation should come from the fear of failure, of accomplishing their goals. But it just adds that extra dimension. And, the nice thing is we have such a strong, deep team right now. Our JV is extremely good, and they push us to the brink on the varsity side. And I do a lot of things where I try to match up varsity on varsity as well, because you want your best playing your best, but we really are flexible in what we can do, which is really nice.
If you were able to kind of take a step back, would you say you have a coaching style? And if so, where did you develop your coaching style?
Yeah, I think I do. It came from football. I'm going to be honest with you. I played college football, and I learned a ton about what a practice looks like there, the efficiency of a practice, kind of the breaking it down into, the various attributes of, team individual fundamental drill work, all that. And that's really where I think my practice plan mentality comes from. And then, just how to hold kids accountable on a daily basis. And, one of my messages to the girls today is that, they've got to continue to focus on every rep and make every rep count. And that's hard for kids. Some days they don't have the energy that maybe they did the day before. And I'm always asking them to, when they step in that gym, to be at their best for that allotted time that we're given to work. And hopefully they understand the value and importance of that. Every day we take a step forward, we're getting closer, but every day we don't, someone else is gaining ground on us. So.
You mentioned playing football, the 4 years of Bethany for you. Like, did you imagine that you would be coaching volleyball someday?
Oh, I had no idea. I would have never guessed that. And in fact, I think I vowed to my wife I'd never coach girls. So no, I completely had no idea. That was before I had daughters, and I couldn't quite understand the differences of how those girls would laugh and have fun out there. And now I've found that that's so enjoyable. And there's aspects about this that I really think people are missing if they never get to coach girls in general, but just, even this sport. I've learned so much about this sport, and it's such a dynamic sport to coach.
So you mentioned your daughters. Was that the main inspiration to get into coaching? I know you've kind of shared this story before, but was that kind of your big push to get into volleyball?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I was pushing basketball because I knew that sport, and that's where I was kind of pushing them to go. And then they fell in love. We had some nice programs here in town that got them involved. And that's the key, as young kids, you want them to choose what they want to do. And my oldest daughter fell in love with volleyball, and I quickly saw that that's the route she was going to go. And I saw that if she was going to be successful, we needed to commit to it at the highest level possible. And so we got a lot of people involved, and that just kind of, in a small town, you just kind of end up where you need to be if there's not people in place at that time, or if you just feel that that's something that you can help. And that's kind of what got me here.
Greg Maxwell joining us here on today's show with our quality time interview, Ellinwood head volleyball coach. All right, so once you did say, okay, I'm going to commit to volleyball, I'm going to start coaching this, like, where did you start? Like, where did you begin? Okay, like, where do I go to start learning this game a little bit better?
That's where I think I probably learned more about this sport than any sport, because of the fact I hadn't played it. I was open to listen to anybody who knew anything about this game, whether it be show me how to put a net up or show me what a rotation looks like. And there were some people in town here, some of our coaches at the time, some teachers that have helped me tremendously to get kind of just going. And then, once I kind of got a taste of it, then, we started going to Wichita State and learning from Coach Lamb down there. He's been a phenomenal influence on us, or on me especially. And then even some Barton coaches have been very helpful in just taking you that next step. And now, I'm still 100% open and love learning, and, try to add new pieces every year, try to add to my knowledge base and my understanding of it, and stay modern with the game. I think that's a big part of, volleyball has changed so much. And I feel I got in at the right time for what fit my mentality. And I love that we're able to kind of stay, current with the current game.
What is or was the hardest thing to grasp, like, as you were a very new coach in volleyball? Was there anything in particular that stood out to you that, like, this is tough to figure out?
When I first started, the rotation baffled me. And that it's funny because, that's something that, for anyone who played the game or been around the game, it's so simple. And it'd be, just like someone new coming into football. There's things I could talk about, coverages and blocking schemes and, all those things. It's just natural. It's natural because you did it and you lived it. So yeah, rotation was baffling. I remember my assistant coach in middle school, she talked about coverage, and I was like, okay, well, we need to do that. And then she explained there was more than one type of coverage. And, once I could align it with football, it made sense. And that's kind of how I've kept it for my own thinking. My daughter coaches up at UNK, and she still laughs at some of the things I do with my girls, because she's like, that's just not how volleyball is done, but the results are there. So it makes sense. I hope my girls, when they go out and play at the college level, can adapt quickly to what probably the more veteran volleyball coaches, communicate with them.
Well, building that Ellinwood culture up in the sport of volleyball, coach, what has that been like, and what have been some of the keys to just kind of continue to push it forward?
You have to start young. I mean, I recognize that way back when my older daughter was in it, I could already tell that at that point in her career, her age class and in the classes around her were already a little bit behind, and we did a ton with those girls. But it really enlightened me that with my younger daughter, all those classes around her and that group has to be involved at the highest level as quickly as possible. And, lighting that fire of passion of seeing competition and enjoying that, being part of that team and being part of something special. And obviously at that age, they had a lot of success, and that really lit the fire for them. And then once you're in that realm, I think it's truly understanding, what you're teaching them at what age level, and getting them to truly understand, that there's long-term growth, but that success also needs to occur along the way.
Making it to state last year, great experience for your club. Now with the expectations coming into this year, what did you pull from that state appearance experience from last year they can take into this year?
The Saturday is different, and we've been there a couple times, and they. I told them on Friday night we absolutely played lights out on Friday in pool play, and I'm very blunt and honest with them. I flat looked at them. I said, girls, if you bring the same mentality tomorrow, you're going to be playing for a state championship. I said, but if I see it different in your eyes first thing in the morning, you're going to see concern in me, because then we aren't embracing that moment. And they had a different look. It was different for them. They hadn't been there before. They didn't quite know mentally how to prepare for that, and you can't blame them. Life is about experiences, and until you've been there, you just don't always have that answer. And even for me as a coach, how to prepare them for that, you don't always have the answer, because those kids themselves have to learn that themselves. And so being there, they've tasted it, they know what it's like. They left with a lot of regret is probably too strong of a word to use, but they were not satisfied, and that alone, is definitely a driving factor in who they are, and it's fueling their fire right now.
Coach, good insight. Appreciate your time and best of luck the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
That is Greg Maxwell, head coach of the Ellinwood volleyball team, joining us for Quality Time.